Hello viewer, and welcome to Spotlight here on Hope TV, where you'll look and live. And we always do our very best to bring to you persons who are living the Christian life as they impact the particular areas that God has called them, and as they execute the responsibilities that God has given them. And we are happy again on this edition of Spotlight to have with us the governor of Makueni, that is Professor Kivutha Kibwana, and he'll be telling us more about his values, his godly values, and also very important about his views on BBI and also about his presidential ambition. Again, this Spotlight, we are happy to have you. Welcome. You've had quite a bit of experiences as a governor. And one of the things that has come out, as we alluded in the beginning, is that you've done very commendable work, work that speaks for itself. Let's connect this with your faith and the Lord's Prayer that says, may your kingdom come, and may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. May your kingdom come. As you are building the community here, and let me call it, quote unquote, the kingdom here. Do you sometimes feel like that Lord's Prayer, the kingdom come, is connected with what you're doing for the community here?
I think sometimes people focus on the word. Like there are some denominations you can go to, and not even denominations, but some pastors believe that they are ordained to just preach the word. But the word, in my view, must be accompanied by social, there is the word and then there is social gospel. And they should be intertwined. And that's why Christ would find that people have no food. He says, is there anybody here with some, something? And then, yes, there are 2 fish, there are 5 loaves, let people have food. Healing, the healing ministry. He would, heal people. He would encourage people, even his disciples, he would. So I think there has to be that there has to be that a connection of the word and what happens so that people living in this world are also provided for. They are also comfortable, which is, therefore, let the kingdom come. Is both the kingdom in terms of the word. Let the word come and let the word influence us. Let the word become second nature to us. Let the word manifest our special relationship, our personal relationship with God. But that kingdom is also about the things that must happen so that we are sustained. And that is why I really like when I see denominations where, or churches where they, for example, they can have a dispensary, they can have a school, they can, make some provision for kids who are lacking in terms of school fees. Where, for example, I know of Archbishop, the current chair of NCCK, Tim Ndabuki. So Ndabuki has started to have like a cooperative for the church. A school, a university for the church. Things that speak to how do your people also survive in this world, so that the kingdom comes in terms of the word and the kingdom comes in terms of this provision. Of course, that kingdom come is how we continue to be Christ-like. How we continue to live so that we manifest that sanctification, because it can't be a corrupt kingdom. Because Christ is a manifestation of holiness. So even that aspect, and I think that's why even when we talk about corruption, it is not just the corruption of the elite. In actual fact, sometimes one sees that we are becoming pervasively corrupt, because even our citizens, like when you don't want to work, when you just want to go and like young people, you know, there's the drugs, mukuka, whatever, that's being corrupt. If you want handouts and you will not take responsibility, and corruption at all levels. So again, in that Lord's Prayer, which is a very beautiful summary of a lot of what should happen in the Christian situation, we have to think about how Christ lived. He taught, and he provided, and he taught people how to provide. So I think it is that holistic gospel.
Yeah, and you're talking about the holistic gospel, and you've also talked about the church in the present day. You talked about the church, you know, putting up hospitals, putting up schools, and there are some, what you can call some more contemporary challenges. For instance, unemployment. For instance, young people and abusing drugs. Just to name a few. Now let's put the church here. Are there, when you think as a leader, are there some particular things, challenges of the people that you'd want to interest the church to engage in terms of bringing solutions?
I think the church, because I can speak for the church, but even other faiths, but if I speak for the church in this instance, if we are slightly over 80% Christian, it will mean that the capacity for the church to reach very many people is quite high. And that is why even politicians, you know, will want some relationship with the church, particularly as we draw nearer elections, so that they can get some support. And therefore, if the church is that close to all these people, first of all, it is able to know their problems in an intimate way, because there is also that trust. What I may tell a pastor, I may not tell you know, a secular leader. I may not, you know, have that trust. So, first of all, the church is able to understand in an intimate way what is ailing the society. And as a result, therefore, if a government said, we want to partner with you in terms of this development arm, because many of them are trying to, because they know of these problems, sometimes they don't have enough resources, because the resources also come again from the same people. So if there was a way to like NGOs are working, sometimes NGOs work with the development partners, NGOs work with the government. So if one was to say, okay, there is an aspect that we may not interfere with. We can't interfere with how you deliver the word. We can't deliver. There is separation. There is that separation there. You know, it's your business to present God as your doctrine says. So we will not interfere with that. But what about partnering in terms of helping like the young people? What is it that each church, for example, if each church was able to say that I want to work with young people, and maybe government as a way of partnering with, if you partner, with the Catholic Church, with the SEK, with the AIC, with the, all those, if you partner with them and say, okay, we have a program about youth, but we want to work with you because you are, you have the capacity of being the last mile of delivery. And you can deliver this even to introduce, ethics, morality, and so on, as as you work with these kids, whether it's drug abuse, whether it's something about alleviating unemployment, you know, I think there is a big opportunity there. But sometimes we don't engage because we are being told that there is strict separation of church and the state. And of course, I don't see that separation in real terms. So there is that opportunity. Of course, it shouldn't be done in such a way that the state will therefore say there are certain things that I can interfere in terms of doctrine, in terms of you know, that aspect. So personally, I feel that that is something that should be explored. Even the missionaries, when the missionaries came, they knew that there must be the hospital, there must be the school. They knew that would happen, and even training of people in agriculture, training of how to be good, you know, mothers and so on. So that is something that we have not emphasized, and it is something that, for me, I think there's a huge opportunity.
Okay.
And you deal with all the faiths. Of course, we know that the Christian faith has a majority of people, whether it's young people, whether it is who. And even I have watched here that during holidays, many of the denominations have meetings of youth, meetings of women, of men, and those are also good avenues to not only convey the Christian message, but also convey things about development, like things about health, things about, for the young people, about, you know, those drugs are not good, and so on.
Yes,
and so forth, sorry. And so on, and so forth. So, for me, that's a huge opportunity.
A huge opportunity. And you sometimes, Governor, it's the church does so many things, but every congregation is doing something. So it's difficult sometimes to aggregate and say, look at what the church has done. Maybe sometimes a way in which of bringing like a summary report. This is what the church has been doing. Because sometimes the church is too split, and sometimes what it does doesn't seem to be very well accounted for, but it does a lot of work, as you say, and has lots of opportunities. And as you talking about the church, you talked about church and state, and there's supposed to be a certain separation there, which comes to just what this country is all about. You know, you've studied amongst the places in the United States. And one of the things about the United States is that people have this view that once you go there, there is something like an American dream, that you must make it, you know. If you don't make it in America, then, I mean, it's unlikely that you will. There's that view. But if we were to import that here in our country and ask ourselves, Governor, what's Kenya about? What is it about?
Okay. What is Kenya about?
What's Kenya about? What's the point? Apart from people living here. Yeah.
You know, in my view, Kenya is a country with a lot of promise. Because when you look at our educational levels, when you look at the fact that since independence, we have this bureaucracy, the public bureaucracy, at the national level, at the local level, which can drive a country very well. Even when you look at the people who are in the diaspora, if they came back home, they are enough to run another country, even more, and they are very qualified. But some of them have gone away because from the 80s and from the 90s, some of them didn't feel home in Kenya. So you look at the resources that we have. When you look at everything that we have, you look at our population, you look at how people work hard, people want to work hard, there is no excuse not to succeed, except that there is a deficit of leadership. And that's the bottom line. You know, whether as a governor, I may be afraid of saying that, because I believe the moment I seem to criticize leadership, then people will not be happy with me who are in top leadership. But that's the truth. Let the truth be told.
Yeah.
And it is leadership, not just political leadership, but it is leadership across the board, because sometimes leadership tends to influence each other. If, for example, we dealt with our corruption in a significant way, and therefore there wasn't the wastage that exists, a lot of resources would be released to do the things that we say, like this youth unemployment, which is a big problem.
You know, as you speak about corruption, Governor, it's part of somehow has become part of the culture of this country.
Unfortunately.
So if you were to talk about what Kenya is all about, one of the things that you can pick out easily, it's about quick deals. You know, it's about if you can be able to see who needs to be seen, you know, in the fashion they need to be seen, you will get what you want. And which I know it's an area that you're interested in, the area of creating a national philosophy, a concrete national philosophy, which we have a deficit in. And from where you sit right now, what would you prescribe as a good philosophy that will also fulfill the promise and the hopes of the people?
Of course, for that promise, we have to construct it together. And I think an important element is our relationship with God, whatever our faiths. I think that would be a very, very important component, because even in America, we witnessed, of course, one can criticize President Trump, for some of the things that he did, but there was also an aspect of saying, even in America, we must acknowledge God. It's not enough to have that said on the dollar, but it has to be done in a real way. And some people can, you know, criticize him for, was he genuine in that or not, but he released people of faith in his country to come forward and proclaim it. So in that national philosophy, you know, there would be that. There are elements which can be strengthened, like the element of work and discipline. Because without that element of work and discipline, it can't, again, a country cannot go forward. There would have to be the question of transparency, the accountability, the ethical behavior, the moral behavior. That is something that, even if it takes long for people to learn it, they have to relearn it. They have to relearn it. And then there's the question of equity, so that whatever we do, you spread it to all your people. You do not discriminate, whether it is gender, whether it is person with disability, whatever, whether it is ethnic, whether it is race, whether it is whatever. You make sure that in your country, in our country, everybody deserves, you know, to be treated equally. Then there are populations, like, if we don't focus on certain populations, like our young population, our senior citizens, the population that is kind of disadvantaged because of the dysfunction of our system, you have now to, in that philosophy, you have to say that they will also be center stage. And there won't be big tribes and small tribes. You know, each tribe, we are, of course, as body of Christ, and with the other faiths, we are one tribe. So that I don't feel that because I'm supposed to be part of the big five, as I'm Kamba, I deserve more. I deserve more. That's not the way Christ does maths. Because each one of us is so precious. Is so precious.
Before God.
A sheep, one sheep is followed. He follows one sheep and leaves the others until he reclaims that one and brings it to the fold.
You know, yeah, you've mentioned about morality as a big aspect in terms of taking our country forward. But this is the irony, because as an African, coming from the African traditional community, the African traditional community prided in values.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it's not so distant. We still have a lot of that part of that community tradition with us.
Yes.
But now the nation that we have built, as you say, is morally bankrupt.
Sure.
So, I mean, who broke the bank?
You know, one very interesting thing, like when we attend funerals, because one of the duties of a governor is to attend funerals, to empathize with your people, sometimes not necessarily just because you know somebody.
Oh, it's good that you clarify it's to empathize with the people, because
Yes.
some people think it's making sure the votes are intact.
No. Some may think it that way, but I think the real reason is, you know, a family can be quite poor, they have lost, and when you go there, you know, you really help that family. But of course, during COVID now, we are having a challenging situation because in many villages, there's simultaneous death. And that causes, you can't go, even in terms of contribution, like sometimes you contribute some little money, that is also becoming a challenge. But in those funerals, when you go and you listen, like these kids who are coming from Nairobi, and the grandfather or grandmother is being buried, who is like 90 and so on. They describe to you the good times they have had with those grandparents. They are told stories, they are, you know, told about values, they feel loved. It's not like the father or the mother in Nairobi who leaves you with the house manager or house help. So that when they come home, even though it's brief to their grandparents, there is a relationship, there is warmth. So, like I grew up myself, where everybody was my parent. You know, everybody who was the age of my parents was my parent. And if they found me doing something that was untoward, they would, you know, tell me that that's not good. And if they decided that it was an extreme something I was doing which was not right, they would still beat me. If I came home and I reported that so-and-so had beaten me, I would be asked nicely, yeah, so-and-so beat you, why? Then I would explain. Then I would be beaten again because the mistake, it's a real mistake. So even after school in the evening, particularly Friday, we would sit with, you know, grandmother, we would sit with the elders, and they would tell us stories. And actually that was education, because the stories were about values, even if they are told in the form of this animal did this, and this animal was greedy, and this animal was, you know, brave, and this one was wise, and another one was kind. So later on, even as I got interested in literature, I learned the value of that kind of education. So we had two types of education, three actually, because we had the one in the school, we had the one in the, you know, in the Sunday school, and then we had the one in the evening with our, where we are told riddles, and we are told proverbs, and we are told, you know, stories. So I don't think we can run away from using some of that to reclaim our new moral compass. And that is why I talked about, in that national philosophy, you know, what is the role that we admit, the role of our faiths, because again that would be important. And I remember after the genocide in Rwanda, Kagame, part of what also he did was to get the entire, you know, the villages go through Rick Warren's book, the 40 Days. Purpose-driven life, not the church one, but the purpose-driven life. They went through that. So again, it is like when your morality has gone to the dogs, even empires like the Greek, the Egyptian civilization, it reached a point with all their glory that they got into descent. And usually you get into descent when your morality, when your values, you know, the Roman Empire, all those empires, you know, and if we are not careful, as not a Kenyan empire, but as the Kenyan, our country, we are going to that, we are going to that level where we don't like empathize again with young people. Some have degrees, they have no jobs. Nobody's seriously listening to them except telling them that things will be okay. You can't have so many people who are not citizens, so to speak, because they don't have the rights of citizens. And then you hope that things will be okay. Something must happen so that our country is called to order. Called to order, and we begin to accept that there is equality of citizenship, and we have to work towards providing, you know, for all of us. And the greed of leaders, that becomes history, because it's very short-sighted.
You know, and when we were talking earlier about the church and the opportunities that exist to solve contemporary problems, I think morality is one of those areas that directly would fall in the hands of, you know, in the hands of the church, because that's what they exist to do, you know, to create character on people and community. And you've mentioned Rwanda and what happened there. As you know, a sad story of negative ethnicity, and you've been there and you've seen what it has done for this country, and what it hinders even now going forward. And now there is the Building Bridges initiative, and one of the things that it's supposed to, in a way, cure is violence that comes with negative ethnicity. Maybe you can comment about that, what you feel the BBI will cure, and maybe some of its gaps as well.
I think before you can prescribe a solution to something, you must understand it very well. It's important to understand where we are at and where we are at. If the leadership has been part of taking us to where we are, it's not easy for them to give us a solution on their own. They have to say, okay, we are not in a good situation. There is this negative ethnicity. There is this corruption. There is this public debt. There is this youth unemployment. And there is a bad economy. There is COVID. There is all these things. So we must find a solution together. And we have a genuine national dialogue, because actually that's one thing we haven't had since independence. We have never had a genuine, even when we were doing the constitution leading to 2010, we didn't have a genuine national conversation. And you can have it from villages. You can tell people, what do you think of your country? What are the issues in our country? How do you think we can solve some of these issues? And you can get people who genuinely aggregate what is being said. And then that even will be cathartic in terms of when people know, I really count, when the Constitution says I'm sovereign, it's true. And therefore, they begin to offer the solution. Like young people, when, for example, we bring them together and we ask them, what do you think we should do? What are the problems? They first of all feel respected, they feel honored, and they are very creative. And some of them have finished their degrees, they are high diplomas, they are diplomas from recognized institutions, and they are doing nothing. They are wasted talent, so to speak. So the BBA process was not really a people-driven process. Maybe there was an intention to do that, but that didn't come through. And I think it will still be a wasted opportunity because of not accepting to really involve Kenyans in a genuine way. Of course, I had a challenge in Makueni, because in Makueni, we have an elaborate system of public participation. And in one of those public participations led by the county assembly, the people said that they now like they like the constitution bill of 2020. Okay, what was their reasoning? They said, if with 15% we have done what we have done, why would you deny us 35%? So when you begin to tell them that, this BBI will be very expensive, there are all these constituencies which are coming up and all these offices. When you tell them that even that 35% might not be possible because we are getting problems with the 15%. When you tell them the judiciary is being retrenched in terms of its authority, its powers, and it means that the executive will be very powerful. When you tell them that the police, whatever was making the police somewhat guarded because there was a commission that is being withdrawn. When you tell them those things, they're saying, no, for us, they're more or less cynical because they're saying we don't believe that we will ever get leaders who will believe in us and who will help us. So if we have this money, at least here at home, and we make decisions, because here they make decisions on what will be in the budget, they believe that they will do better. So when they said that, I said, okay, since as a person, I had even taken a matter to the Supreme Court, since as a person, and particularly one who has read constitutions and who was part of making the previous one, I know that there is a problem here. I cannot deny you your voice because according to the Constitution, you are supreme. So I will defer to your decision, but that is not my decision. Because I believe the sovereignty of the people is critical. If the people decide something as a governor, and I think that I think that it is completely inimical to what I think they should do, then I will tell them that I can't continue to be your governor. But in this instance, I said, okay, that's your decision, but it's not my decision. Even the court, when the court said that, the Supreme Court said that we cannot continue listening to this advisory because at the High Court, there are other cases. So we want to wait for those High Court cases to end, and then, if it's necessary, this matter can be revisited. I also said, the moment courts in a democracy make a decision, I cannot tell them that unless you can appeal somewhere, but Supreme Court, there is no way you can appeal except to God. So I still say that I respect what the courts do, but I think this BBI, in my view, is a major problem because it's really changing the constitution that we have in a fundamental way without changing it for the better. Even this question of violence, ethnic, violence at elections will not be a feature of the past. To correct that, you have to go back to the electoral law so that there's electoral justice. You make sure that there is an independent judiciary that is truly independent, which is not influenced by any political side. Up to now, we are seeing the IEBC being reconstituted. So we are waiting to grasp how that is done so that it's not just people appointed because they relate to some people in power. And also the secretariat, the secretariat itself, and the campaign financing. Like the law about campaign financing has never been changed. It was there, and it has not, people do not want to complete that process, because if you have a lot of money, you have advantage. If you have no money, you have no advantage. So like for presidential election, probably you must have minimum 10B, so 10 billion. So it means that only those who have money and who even maybe use money from the state to campaign, those are the people who will be able to campaign. So there is that problem with the with BBI, and actually, if 5 tribes produce the 5 key leaders, you have about 40-something tribes. So how do you get ethnic harmony because of that situation? And I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but I can foresee at some future time, not too far distant, people realizing that this was not about bringing communities together. It was not about minimizing or dealing with the violence and all that. And then, because when you put things in a constitution, they are not easy to get to remove them. So you can have conflict now, because people realize that BBI did not advantage them. On the contrary, it took them to a worse place.
Okay, so it's interesting that you really well articulate your reservations, and it's a very interesting balance where the people say one thing, but you also think something different, but you let the people, actually have their say, and it's interesting because when we think about the core question of ethnicity in Kenya and what we have learned over time, and now the BBI process is supposed to fix that, but clearly it's not clear how that is going to happen. One asks herself, back to the church again, because this is a question about love. Ethnicity is about love. It's about relationships. It's about the neighbor. It's about really loving the neighbor. And the church has a huge network across this country. But oftentimes, the church does not contribute as it should, to this neighborhood narrative or neighbor narrative. What do you tell the church when it comes to this matter of negative ethnicity in this country and the church's role?
Most of the churches, particularly urban churches, because in the rural areas, there's a tendency of the same ethnic group going to the congregation. But in the urban areas, you have a mix of all Kenyans. So in that church, one will discover that people of different ethnicities subject themselves to the Lordship of Christ, and therefore they are one tribe. Although there are many ethnic groups in that particular church. And when they are there, they don't view themselves quote politically or culturally in terms of being different. And they do many things together. The levels of intermarriage in this country are very high. In actual fact, probably the biggest tribe, or one of the biggest tribes, must be the tribe of the intermarrieds, their offspring. And yet, the politician knows that I must hold these people captive by telling them that we are from one group. Our group is endangered. I'm the only one who can advocate for you. I must go to the center so that I can get goodies for you. But 5 years later, when the majority of the people, particularly those at the bottom of our society, 5 years later, they can't show what goodies were brought back, what advantage they have. They can't show. And yet, that culture of being told that we belong together, the church can actually help by telling everybody, you belong to Christ. First and foremost, you don't belong to your tribe, first and foremost, if you're a Christian. That might be a controversial statement to make, but truly, there is that sonship of our Lord and daughtership, of our Lord. So the church can debunk. Actually, one of the institutions that can debunk this question of of the tribe that wants to take advantage of another tribe, to be superior to another tribe. It's the church actually can debunk that kind of myth. Of course, culturally, it's not negative to belong to an ethnic group because there are good values, like we were saying before, which you can get from, from that belonging. But then it becomes negative when you think that, and whether it's even gender. Sometimes people say that in the Bible there is gender discrimination and so on and so forth, but even he was able to say that there's not going to be discrimination, even, on all those terms. Therefore, the church has recently not raised its voice sufficiently to speak truth to power. And Andy Crouch, in his book, Power as a Gift, the church must say that power is a gift. God, gave Adam and Eve power, even after they fell, subsequently. Still power to do justice, power as a gift from him to do good, not power to hurt his creatures. And I think I like that idea that power is a gift from God to do good, so that we are image bearers of God. The things that God does, we mimic him, we try to replicate them. And it's only when you do that, as Christ did, then, there is a good society here on earth.
And I know that you have an interest in the climate change conversation. Can you just tell us some important things that we need to know about climate change?
First of all, it's very real. And we have witnessed destruction of our forests. We have witnessed the variance of rainfall when it doesn't take place when it used to. We can't prepare ourselves for the seasons when it's less than it used to be. We have seen, gullies particularly in the rural areas. We have seen that. We have seen variations in temperature so that it's hotter than it used to be. We have seen when it rains, there can be flash floods and they can be very destructive. We have seen all these changes, and those who are older are able to chronicle them very well, to say that this never used to happen, and so on. And so, what is it that is happening? And of course, even in terms of industrial pollution, and we have significant pollution in our country, particularly through the rivers and even in the industrial areas. So those who are older will be able to tell you that it didn't used to be like this. So I think one thing is for us to accept that there is this new problem, and we need to confront it, particularly at the grassroots level, because that's the effect, where the effect is at. I used to be the president of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. And there was a lot of debate then about climate change and what should happen and the commitments by countries. There were some countries those days, particularly China, who were not part of the cooperation of doing what is necessary worldwide to begin, even in terms of raising funds to ameliorate the effects of climate change. But and recently also America was in denial about this, but fortunately now there is a new leadership which is committed to reversing their earlier positions, because this is a world agenda. And even there people are saying that COVID, we don't know, it's also traceable to its origin and its impact to actually climate change situations. So in the counties, for example, we have started to have regulations to guide us towards dealing with climate change. How are we going to mobilize resources? What are its manifestations in the first place? And how can the people commit to climate action that is going to reverse some of the problems that We have sometimes even now water, scarcity of water, and the forests, and therefore the quality of the air, and so on. And Makueni, we were one of the first counties to initiate regulations, and we even committed 12% of our budget. And we have committees, 17 now, at the ward level. We have 30 wards, 17 committees which are doing climate change work, and we want to make all the wards have committees. We have also the World Resources Associations, RUAs, which also try to check on the water resource, what is happening to the water resource. We have some forest associations. So this is a real agenda. That's why the Devolution Conference that will happen in Makueni in August 23rd to 26th is committed to climate change action at the grassroots or at the subnational level. And I wish this is something that in our churches, it is something that becomes a discussion, because God created beauty for us and gave us a garden, gave us the prospect of prosperity, endless prosperity, until we were disobedient, and that changed. But he told us that you are stewards. I give you dominion over, the birds, the fish, the whatever, so that we would be prudent in terms of managing this resource. But now, with some of the greed of people who are doing some industries and they don't care about pollution, and when there isn't good regulation at the national level, and then some people can bribe and allow, ensure that things that are not correct appear, like dumping of waste into the river and other places. So there has to be a big commitment by the political leadership, but this is a matter that within the church, because of what God told us to do to protect the earth, the environment, so that we could enjoy it. He could make provision for us to enjoy it. I think it's an absolutely essential issue today. And that's a point that I'll take to the steering committee, because that's a point which had not been placed before the steering committee. Not just prayer alone for 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but actually that bringing that insight onto the table.
Okay. That would be great.
And thank you for that idea.
That would be great. Yes. And I know that our viewers will not be content if I don't ask you this question, because you've mentioned that you are a leader of a particular you are president of a particular international organization, but you've also expressed that you would want to be president of this country. Mm-hmm. So how is that ambition going?
Well, that ambition is for real. I would like it to be more than a personal ambition, because if the voters would be like over 15 million, and there is this ethnicity thing, there is this money thing, people waiting for money, there is the question of the system sometimes preferring certain people. This is a matter which have been seriously bringing to prayer, and asking some prayer partners, asking some churches to pray for me and with me, because it can't be done without divine intervention. I think I'm equal to the task, because actually some of what needs to be done is not that complicated, although some people might think it's complicated. If you were to allow, for example, devolution to work, you make sure that the monies come to the counties. You make sure that the duties that are supposed to be done by governors and their governments are done, so that there is that resource flow, it's unhindered. And you are careful, if people do wrong things, then you call them to order. So that would make a lot of the populations, really feel that we are part of this country. And this is what earlier on I was talking about citizenship. It's not enough to have an ID. To be a citizen of Kenya, you have also to enjoy Kenya in terms of how, you know, the people at the top enjoy it, so that you have your education, you have your medicine, you have your life, so to speak. So that will be one thing. If you tell people, okay, maybe some of us have been corrupt before, and we don't want to lead in a way that we exhibit vengeance. We don't want vengeance politics, because that will not take us anywhere. But we are going to make sure that we negotiate. If you have done some things, you can come and say, you don't cheat like Ananias. You don't cheat and say, this is what I got, and so on. And the wife comes and says the same. You say, okay, I may not have done some things right, and let us negotiate. And and even those who have a lot of money from the past, you tell them, do things that are productive. I think this is what happened in Southeastern Asia. Do now make an industry so that you can employ people. Don't just build big buildings and produce things. And you say, now going forward, if we catch you, then you will accept that you must go to prison. There is no fine. You go to prison. So that we, in actual fact, in 2002, when Kibaki came into power, the people were arresting police people because they believed from now on there would be no corruption. So if you convince the people that your leadership is about integrity, they will support you, to make sure that going forward, that happens. So there is a devolution, this corruption thing, and you tell Kenyans, all of you are equal before the constitution, before the law. And we are not going to favor any person. You work hard. We say to business, you produce jobs. You produce wealth. You take our country forward. We are going to guarantee you clean business, so that you are not being harassed. You are not being told 10%. And even these days, people of the border are being asked for money. People of the pro boxes are being asked for money. People of the matatus are being asked for money. People in the bars are being asked for extra money, and all that kind of stuff. So even before you think about the big economy, the economic policies and so on, there are things that you can do in 100 days, and people will ask, what's happened to Kenya? Is this the Kenya that we were living in? But to do those things, you have to, you can't do them if you are competing with business. Because if and when I'm a president, I don't want to be competing to say that, I have my businesses and I'm procuring with you. Like here in Makueni, we have open contracting. Open contracting meaning when we advertise for anything, people bring their bids. And that information is open to everybody and all the steps. If any of our procurement officers does something funny, it's permanent record. So even when the police want to arrest them, they will have the evidence. And people know that. And because they know that, now they are careful. And you can do that for the whole country. And say, apart from maybe military, some of the procurements where you may want some secrecy or whatever because of military, there are few. So you can have, an open society, and therefore, of course, you'll have to now ask, who are we going to do this together? But when you get the voice of the church, the voice of the faiths, when you get the voice of proper business people who want to do good business, when you get the voice of young people now who feel an opportunity is arising for them, and so on, and you keep also negotiating because you don't want people who feel threatened, some cartels, to bring you down. But you tell them that this country is big, just play fair, and you'll have your action within the country. So I'm saying that this is a very serious proposition. I'm not in it as a joke, because I know that I could, with others, help our country. But then our country has to stop thinking tribalism, stop thinking money for elections, and then the system itself, we have to tell it, now we want fair elections. We have violence and all these things when the elections are not fair. And I think as time goes on, we are going to find like-minded people, and we will say, Kenya, if you give us a chance, we can change our country. But again, if you want to stay in the same old track for some 5-10 years, you see, that's another option that still they can take. But I think people are changing and they are realizing that maybe it is time to change our leadership. So I am there. The only thing that I can ask my fellow Christians, people of other faiths, is to pray for me and others who are like-minded and who want to be part of really offering some change. And so this matter is in the hands of God.
Okay. We look forward to you and seeing the like-minded people. And as you say, it's in the hands of God. Thank you very much. We are very grateful, wonderful insights. And thank you for hosting us here in a wonderful place. And may God continue to bless you as you serve God's people at this level and any other levels that He chooses. We are very grateful.
And thank you very much for coming to Makueni for this conversation. And I wish hope to continue giving us hope.
Thank you. Viewers, we have been talking to Professor Kivutha Kibwana. Amazing insights, and I'm sure that as you listen to them, then you feel that hope is stirred. Hope is stirred in you that indeed a good life, abundant life is possible, because there are agents in this country like Professor Kivutha Kibwana who are saying, yes, I'm here for abundant life. God bless you. Thank you for watching.